Why do the Cure sound lonely? Not sad, not angry, not hopeless. Lonely. For nearly 50 years, Robert Smith has written songs about love, memory, fear, longing, and the strange feeling of being disconnected from the world around you. Millions of people have found comfort in those songs, which is a strange thing when you think about it. How does music about isolation make people feel understood? Why do so many Cure songs feel like they were written at 2 o'clock in the morning? And why do listeners keep returning to them decades after they were first released? The answer isn't simply heartbreak or depression or gothic fashion. The answer is that Robert Smith learned how to transform emotions into places. Places you can hear, places you can feel, places that somehow feel familiar even if you've never been there before. To understand why the Cure sound lonely, we have to go back to where it all began, a town called Crawley. When people think about influential British bands, they usually think about London, Manchester, or Liverpool, not Crawley. Crawley was an ordinary town south of London. It wasn't famous for producing musical revolutions. It wasn't the center of a scene. It wasn't where anyone expected one of the most influential bands in alternative music to emerge. Yet it was there that Robert Smith and a group of school friends began playing music together in the 1970s. The early versions of The Cure sounded very different from the band most people know today. The songs were leaner, more directly connected to post-punk, less atmospheric, less dreamlike. But even then, something felt different. While many bands focused on politics, rebellion, or attitude, Robert Smith seemed fascinated by something much quieter. Emotion. Not public emotion, private emotion. The feelings people experience when nobody else is around. That focus would eventually become the defining characteristic of The Cure. Most songwriters tell stories about events. Robert Smith often writes about feelings. That's an important distinction. A typical song tells you what happened. A Cure song tells you what it felt like. That's why so many listeners connect with the music on such a personal level. The songs rarely hand you a simple narrative. Instead, they create emotional landscapes that listeners can step into for themselves. Think about Pictures of You. On the surface, it's a song about memory, but underneath, it's about something deeper. The realization that our memories are imperfect, that the people we loved become stories, that the moments we treasure slowly change shape over time. Most people know exactly what that feels like. Or consider A Forest, a song built around pursuit, distance, and uncertainty. The details almost don't matter. What matters is the feeling of searching for something that remains forever out of reach. That's Robert Smith's gift. He understands that emotions are often more powerful than explanations. And because of that, his songs continue to resonate long after specific trends have faded away. If Robert Smith's lyrics provide the emotional foundation, the music itself completes the illusion. Listen closely to a Cure record and notice how often there is space. Space between notes, space between instruments, space inside the songs themselves. Many bands fill every available second with sound. The Cure often does the opposite. The bass moves patiently through the mix. The drums pulse beneath the surface. The guitars shimmer somewhere in the distance. Nothing feels rushed. The arrangements allow listeners to sit with their thoughts. And in that space, loneliness has room to breathe. This is one of the reasons The Cure sound so different from many of their contemporaries. The music doesn't overwhelm you. it surrounds you, like fog, like rain, like a memory returning unexpectedly years later. The Cure doesn't merely write songs about loneliness. They make loneliness audible. If there is one album that best explains The Cure, it's Disintegration. Released in 1989, the album arrived during a period when Robert Smith was reflecting on aging, identity, success, and the passage of time. The result was a record that feels enormous and intimate at the same time. The opening track, Plainsong, begins with distant chimes that sound less like a song and more like weather approaching on the horizon. From the very first moments, the listener enters a world built from memory, longing, beauty, and fear. Then come songs like Pictures of You, Love Song, Lullaby, and the title track, Disintegration. Each explores a different corner of the emotional landscape that Robert Smith had spent years building. What makes the album remarkable isn't simply its sadness, it's its honesty. Disintegration understands something many records never do. Loneliness isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes it's simply the realization that time continues moving whether we're ready or not. And somehow, The Cure found a way to translate that experience into sound. More than 3 decades later, the album still feels timeless. Here's the strange thing about The Cure. People don't return to this music because they want to feel worse. They return because they want to feel understood. There's a difference. The best Cure songs remind listeners that loneliness is part of being human, that uncertainty is part of being human, that grief, longing, love, and memory are experiences we all share. The music doesn't offer easy answers. It doesn't promise everything will be okay. Instead, it offers companionship. A voice in the darkness saying, "You are not the only person who has felt this way." That may be the secret behind The Cure's longevity. Generations change, music changes, technology changes, but human emotions remain remarkably consistent. And few artists have captured those emotions with as much honesty as Robert Smith. So why do The Cure sound lonely? Because Robert Smith learned how to transform emotions into places. The distant guitars, the spacious arrangements, the fragile vocals, the memories drifting in and out of focus. Everything works together to create a world that feels isolated, intimate, and deeply human. Most music asks us to escape ourselves. The Cure asks us to sit quietly with what we're feeling. And somehow, that makes us feel a little less alone. Maybe that's why people continue discovering this music generation after generation. Because loneliness is universal, and few artists have ever understood it better than The Cure. Until next time, this is Echoes After Midnight.